We are going to have to fix this on three levels: the society, the company, and the individual. None of these are going to be enough alone. We need all three. Let's look at the national level first. As I said in the beginning, many countries have fixed it and are still fixing it. Working hours in Germany have been reduced by more than 1/3 since 1950. How does that kind of thing happen? There is no one answer. It takes things like strong worker protections through appropriate laws, minimum wages so people can actually live on regular working hours, and support for unions to collectively bargain on behalf of workers. All of this requires politicians who will pass these types of laws and enforce them. For instance, China has laws against something like the 996 rule. They're just not enforced. And when Trump was president, he packed many of the government agencies that were supposed to enforce these laws with cronies who turned a blind eye to companies who broke the rules. Quite simply, we need politicians who are on the side of workers, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who recently missed Biden's inauguration because she was on a picket line in the Bronx with workers who are on strike for better pay and got it.
Demanding better working conditions, demanding an end to poverty, demanding an end to war, demanding a better material and just outcomes for all people in the United States.
The country with the lowest working hours is my country, Denmark. I am actually super proud that Denmark is last on that list. And this is partly because we do have very strict laws protecting worker rights, which in my opinion is one of the reasons why Danish employees are some of the happiest and most productive in the world. But it also happened because Danish workers chose it. In Denmark, trade unions and employer organizations renegotiate working conditions every 3 years. And in many, many cases, workers have actually chosen lower working hours and more vacation time over higher wages in these negotiations. We can even look beyond just regulating work time. The European Union is currently drafting laws that will guarantee a worker's right to disconnect so that companies cannot coerce you to always be available on phone or email. And maybe one of the most promising interventions would be a universal basic income. Remember that book I mentioned earlier by Rutger Bregman?
Taxes, taxes, taxes.
In the book, he makes a very strong case for just giving everybody money and argues that every time it's been tested, it's worked wonders for people and society. And one outcome is that people at lower income levels don't have to work 2 or 3 jobs to survive. Universal basic income is a whole topic on its own. I'll link to some great videos in the description where you can learn more about it. The problem is that action at a societal level cannot stand alone because company culture can still pressure employees to work more. Even in Denmark, we have workplaces that are infamous for having an overwork culture. So companies need to fix it as well. And there are so many examples of organizations all over the world that have successfully ended the cult of overwork for their people. Seattle-based tech company Valve have put their entire employee handbook online, and it is the most awesome thing ever. In it, they say a lot of great things, including this about overwork. While people occasionally choose to push themselves to work some extra hours at times when something big is going out the door, for the most part, working overtime for extended periods indicates a fundamental failure in planning or communication. At Menlo Innovations in Ann Arbor, Michigan, they work 40 hours a week and never overwork. Their CEO, Richard Sheridan, put it like this when I visited a few years ago.
In 12 years, we've worked 40-hour work weeks. We've never worked weekends. We've never had to deny or delay a vacation request. All of our clients are external to our organization. They all have their budgetary and scheduled deadlines, but we've constructed a system that if we need to get more done to hit a deadline, we can actually add in more people to help and actually get more done.
You should absolutely read his book, Joy Inc., where he describes the awesome company culture they've created. And before you accuse me of having only American examples, let me tell you about Vega IT in Novi Sad, the 3rd biggest city in Serbia. They have 250 employees doing software development projects for clients. and have also decided to minimize overwork as much as possible. And of course, sometimes there's a deadline on a customer project, so they have to work a little extra. Their CEO, Sasha Popovich, told me that last month the entire company had only 150 overtime hours. That's less than one per person. Interestingly, some of their clients don't approve of this and try to pressure them to make their employees work longer hours so they can finish projects faster. But the answer is always no. And Danish training company Hartmann's, which has won awards for offering the best work-life balance in the country, realized that their trainers deliver the best work when they're not overworked. Interestingly, part of their journey was for their CEO, Annemette Ravn, to scale back her workload and stop emailing people outside of normal working hours because she found it pressured them subconsciously to work more, even though that was never her intention. So companies can definitely do great things to end overwork and have been doing it for over 100 years. But while we definitely need action from our nations and corporations, each and every one of us also needs to do what we can to cope with overwork. If you're working too much and feeling stressed, have you tried doing a mindfulness meditation combined with an essential oil diffuser? I mention this not because it works, but because this is the type of advice you most often get from coaches, gurus, and workplaces on how to deal with overwork. And I think the reason why this type of advice is so popular is because it requires nothing of the company. It puts the burden on all of us to learn how to live with high workloads. And also, it sounds like an easy fix, doesn't it? No need for tough questions like, am I in the wrong industry, or is society currently structured so that all my hard work only serves to further enrich the already obscenely wealthy? Changing societies and workplaces takes time, and what can you do in the meanwhile if you're currently killing yourself working 80-hour weeks? People can so easily become willing enablers of the cult of overwork. I have no source for this story, so take it with a grain of salt. But a manager working in Japan once shared it with me, and I have no reason to believe he's lying. Now, of course, Japan has a very powerful culture of overwork. There's even a word in Japanese called karoshi, meaning death from overwork. Now, the government is trying to pass laws to reduce overwork, but Japanese employees are so habituated to working long hours that they are actively resisting those measures. This manager told me that the company put a lock on the entry to the building, and employees now had to swipe their ID cards for the doors to open, so the company could register when they came and when they left. If anyone was caught overworking, the manager would be notified and could reprimand that person. Clever, right? Well, here's what the employees at the company did. All of them but one would go clock out in the afternoon at the correct time, but would then sneak back to their desks and keep working. At a much later hour, all of them would meet at the exit and at the same time, and the last person would swipe out so the doors opened and all of them would leave. Now, they rotated the late worker so they could take turns getting in trouble for it. That is an extreme example, but there are many ways we can play into this. For instance, while many US workers get very little vacation time, a lot of them don't even take all the days off they can. 65% of US workers did not take all the vacation days available to them in 2019. If you've been hoodwinked by the cult of overwork, it is no wonder. A lot of people have. I fell into that trap and had to essentially deprogram myself in my early 30s. I graduated from university with a master's in computer science and said to myself, yes, time to build a career. I moved to a different city for a job where I knew absolutely no one and had nothing going on but work. A lot of work. I hated it, moved to a new job in a new city where I also didn't know a soul, so that my days were, work, takeout food and TV, and way too much of each of those. After a couple of years of this, I suddenly had a realization. Yeah, I was making good money and my career was off to a promising start, but I was also lonely, overweight, unhealthy, and unhappy. Right then, I decided to make a change. I scaled back on work, got in shape, and started to make friends. A couple of years later, when I got the chance, I co-founded my own tech company where we outlawed overwork. So what I'm saying is that you can start with yourself. Recognize that all that overwork is just not worth it and find ways around it. Here are some things you can do. First, don't take a job in a workplace that's part of the cult. How can you tell? Well, some people say that you can decode the job ad. Fast-paced, understaffed. Work hard, play hard. You're going to work 60 hours a week, so you better squeeze what you can out of your time off. Also, the CEO is a triathlete. We're looking for a rock star. We want you to pretend you love working our unreasonable hours. But in reality, you'll probably have to talk to the people there and ask them about it directly. One thing that works in your favor is that people in workplaces with a strong culture of overwork are often proud of it and will actually brag about all that work, giving you a great chance to steer clear. Second, if you are currently overworked, find ways to scale back. It's probably not in your contract that you must work 80 hours a week. In most countries, that would be illegal. And this, by the way, can be really insidious because when overwork is not contractually required, it means that it's something you're doing to yourself, not something done to you by others. When other people do bad things to us, it's easier to resist them. When we do them to ourselves, we often end up rationalizing our actions and making up reasons for why we're doing it and why this is fine. So scale back. I am willing to bet that you, like so many others, will find that you get just as much work done in 40 hours a week as everybody else does in 60, 70, or 80. And if your company won't let you scale back, then quitting is absolutely an option. Hey, let's try something fun. Let's do a Google image search for quitting is an option. Alrighty, let's see what we got. Quitting is not an option. Oh, quitting is an option. Good one. Quitting is not an option. Not an option. Not an option. Not an option. And this is probably my favorite. Crawling is acceptable, falling, puking, crying, blood, pain, but quitting is not an option. Huh. It's almost like there's a widespread belief that quitting is bad. I'm planning an entire video similar to this one on quitting. Subscribe if you don't want to miss that one. And seriously, if you're stuck in a workplace that rewards work hours over work quality, get the hell out of Dodge and find a workplace that hasn't got its head stuck up its ass. There are plenty of them. And finally, here's a piece of bad advice you should absolutely ignore. Some people say, don't like your job too much, it'll make you work too hard. That is nonsense. Most of the workaholics I know don't overwork because they like their jobs. It's almost the opposite. They hate their jobs, so they have to work hard to get those raises and bonuses and promotions, or their work lives would be completely pointless. I gotta say, when I started writing this video, I honestly had no idea that it would end up being nearly 90 minutes. So instead of making it one long piece, I've split it into 7 shorter chunks. You can find the link to the other videos in the video description or right up here. I hope you find them entertaining and useful. If so, it would be awesome if you click like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or thoughts, please write a comment. I'd love to know what you think about the cult of overwork.